Hi, I'm Dr. Rahman, and welcome to Black Women's Health. Unless you're living under a rock, you know that Rihanna is about to have her third child within the past 5 years. She's been online saying she knows you're talking about her, and she doesn't care. She doesn't care because one, she's rich. Two, she's in love and she hopes to have as many children as the good Lord will bless her with. Have you ever wondered, is there optimal spacing of children? I mean, does the medical community even have an opinion that they can give to women who are contemplating having more than one child? What's the optimal spacing? Optimal for the baby, optimal for the mom. Have you ever wondered? Have you ever heard? Good question. Did you know that there is such a thing called IPI, inter-pregnancy interval, IPI? And what that is the time between the birth of one child to the conception of another, the second child. So the birth of one child and the time from the birth of that child to the conception of the next child. That's called the IPI, or the interpregnancy interval. And the World Health Organization has stated that the IPI, the optimal IPI, is 24 months. Now, that being said, it should be understood that the IPI is being determined for those countries that are considered low resource countries, countries where over 99% of the maternal deaths and infant mortalities occur. And in these countries where you can have situations with nutritional, medicinal, health deficiencies, things that sometimes are considered maternal depletion syndromes, that the optimal spacing in those scenarios is 24 months, as has been determined by the World Health Organization. But what if you don't live in a low resource country? What if you have financial means? What if you're like Rihanna, you're rich? Is there an IPI for you? Is there an optimal IPI for you to consider? Well, there have been some studies, but I feel as though when we talk about women's health, when we talk about studies, they're deficient, inadequate, not enough, not well studied. I'm finding that in any given topic related to women's health, this has been a recurring theme. Studies not well done, not enough studies, incomplete studies. We need to keep this in mind when I tell you what has been said. In terms of the IPI, the optimal IPI for women living in high resource countries, let me switch that around. What has been said is that if the IPI is less than 6 months, again, IPI, birth of one child to the conception of the next. If the IPI is less than 6 months, there is a higher incidence of spontaneous preterm birth, meaning that second child is more likely to be born prematurely if the IPI is less than 6 months. Interesting to note, it's been documented that African American women in the United States have an IPI less than 6 months, 1.8 times greater than white women. And some believe that this may partially explain why African American women living in the United States have a higher incidence of preterm births. And again, I say this with the caveat that we need more studies because the studies that are available are small studies, incomplete studies, inconsistent across the board for many of the parameters that we are considering. The other thing, that's in terms of the infant. Are there any negative effects or negative impact if the mom chooses to have a pregnancy, to have an IPI less than 6 months, and she lives in a high resource country? Studies show that if she becomes pregnant uh, in less than 6 months with that second child, she is at an increased risk for obesity because there's a greater likelihood that she hasn't lost all of her weight from that first baby. And that because of that increased weight, she's at an increased risk for obesity and possibly an increased risk for gestational diabetes. The other possibility that's been seen, if there's an IPI less than 6 months and the mom has had a cesarean section with that first child, there may not be sufficient healing of her incision, and that she might possibly, and I again say might possibly, because these are things that still need to be evaluated more fully, she might possibly be at an increased risk for uterine rupture with her second pregnancy. So what does this mean? Is there an IPI? Do you have an IPI? What was the spacing between your children? It's clearly an individual decision. My point is that it should be an individual decision that takes into account the medical information available to you. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot of consistent medical information for women who may be living in countries that are not considered low resource countries. In low resource countries, the recommendation is the IPI, optimal IPI, should be 24 months. In high resource countries, not as clear. More research is needed. Until the next time, this is Dr. Rahman saying, take care. The American College of OBGYN recommends an IPI of at least 18 months, avoiding pregnancy intervals shorter than 6 months.